Is a brand worth? Well, if you're talking about Apple or Google, $100 billion or more. For a second year in a row, the two companies claim the top spots on Interbrand's best global brands. 13 of the top 100 hail from the technology sector, and Apple, Google and Facebook are growing the fastest. For the first time, a Chinese brand, Huawei, has entered the report that has been released by the global branding agency for the past 15 years. In addition to identifying the top 100 most valuable brands, the report also examines 3 pivotal ages in brand history. And Interbrand says a new era is upon us, the age of you. Interbrand's Sampson is the African office of the Interbrand Group. We're now joined by founder and chair Jeremy Sampson. Great to have you with us, Jeremy. So I had to check. I looked at Apple's market cap, 530 billion. So you're saying 100 billion or so, about $1 in $5 dollars, is all just because of the brand and that extra difference that people will pay for an Apple phone. It's incredible.
Well, that's right. And, you know, people think back to perhaps the 1980s or so, when if you looked at the market cap of a company, perhaps 70, 80% was tangible. You know, the buildings, all the hard assets, as it were. And remember, in South Africa, we had the so-called intangibles, and that included brand. And often intangibles could just be written off at the stroke of a pen. And now people are realizing that in the last 30, 40 years, that brand and other IP, not just brand, the other IP aspects as well, patents, copyrights, etc., have now come up to the point that the average often is 70, 80% intangibles. And as you're saying, just the brand of Apple is huge.
Yeah.
But think what the brand is worth of someone like a Facebook or a Google. You know, these new companies,
which is intangible in the first place.
And the accountants don't like that, you know, and when a brand is homegrown, as you would know, it doesn't register on the balance sheet. It can only register on the balance sheet if it's been acquired, and therefore a value has been put on that brand in the hard market, as it were. This is where someone like Diageo, the drinks company, has gone something like Smirnoff vodka, which was acquired. Johnny Walker is homegrown. So Johnny Walker has no value on the balance sheet.
Wow.
So this is where the accountants as well haven't been able to sort this out globally. There are still
Have you been able to sort it out in your brand list?
Well, we just say, guys, brands are important. Brands are often the most valuable assets of a company. You think of, we're talking Apple. What is the most valuable asset? It's its brand. And this is where we have a lot of South African companies are being a bit slow perhaps in realizing that their brand is the major asset that they own. You know, we're looking in the mining industry at the moment. Everyone's still talking commodities. Come on, guys, let's move it up to the brand level.
Well, when do you think we could have an African brand on this list? I mean, we've only had the first Chinese brand on this list.
Well, this is where, when Interbrand does its valuation, it's based on a certain set criteria. Firstly, it's done without, in any way, the cooperation of the client. So you have to have the figures public domain. So annual reports, investor relations, whatever. So that's key. And then you have to make sure that perhaps, I think it's a figure of about a quarter of what it does, if not more, is outside its home country. Now, you saw with Huawei, the Chinese brand, I think it's 65% is outside its country. And that's where in the past some of the top American brands haven't figured. And then Interbrand always says, well, look, the major market is the States. You must have at least 5% or so of all revenues in the States. So in South Africa, we have MTN, which is huge around the world, 22 countries. We have Standard Bank, but they're not active in the States. And so for that reason, they don't come in. SAB, but is it South African now? You know, is it a British company? And when you look at all those brands, and it's interesting you mentioned SAB because in the past, corporate brands, if I can call them that, were not seen as part of the mix with all the consumer brands. And that's where that's changing as more and more the corporate brand, like Nestle, for instance, is coming up as in importance.
Is this brand value very deeply rooted? I mean, could we see billions wiped off if something goes wrong? Looking at Apple, we had that naked celebrity scandal. We had some people complaining they didn't want U2 on their iTunes playlist. Or is this quite sustainable?
Well, when Steve Jobs died, everyone said that's the end of Apple. You know, I felt, no. You know, there's at least a 2-3 product range cycle in place. And as you said, look at the market cap. at various times between, I think it's Apple and Exxon, they're the biggest in the world. And they're maintaining that. Their rise in brand value over 20%, which is huge. They're actually growing faster in brand value than Google and just about anyone else. So it shows it's sustainable. And, just in the last couple of weeks, we've had the Apple Watch, unveiled. We're talking about iWallets. Yes, and we've got the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus as well. So they're maintaining things, but new things are coming along as well. So very exciting, and it's certainly a very dynamic brand.
But I really was wondering about this. Why don't we punish brands enough, perhaps? And this is because you look at this, and we've got the banks. After the financial crisis, Goldman Sachs is on this list, Citi and others. What is that about?
But if you go back over the last 5 or 6 years since those recessionary times started, the banks have in fact suffered. Some have suffered more than others, but you're absolutely right to say, why haven't they suffered more? I was talking the other day to a top investment advisor in this country who's now retired, and he was saying, well, thinking back, if I bought shares in Royal Bank of Scotland, and he's from Scotland, you'd never have thought you'd lose your money. Or Lloyds Bank or TSB. So there are brands losing it. Within the top 100, the biggest dropper is Nokia. If we were having a chat 6 or 7 years ago, Nokia was dominant in the mobile phone market. Today, it's almost disappeared. Likewise, BlackBerry.
Final question. You're talking about these brand ages, and I think this reflects the world we're living in. There's so technology driven. 13 of the top 100 are tech. Coke kicked off the top of the list 2 years ago. But what about these ages? Quickly explain the new age of you.
It's more and more we have a dialogue with the brand. The brand doesn't tell us what. We actually have a conversation, we have a dialogue. Most things are interactive. I've got to come back to Apple because it's almost a lifestyle. Do you have an iPhone? Do you have a pad? Do you have a computer? Are you going to have a watch? What are you having? They're talking about now the wallet. So it's a whole lifestyle which is being wrapped around you like a cocoon. And this is where more and more brands want to be part of you and I. They want us for life. They want a share of wallet, a share of throat, call it what you like, but they want to be our friends and stay our friends. And that's where the emotional interaction is so crucial. Functional, always important, but the emotional as well. And this is where, what brands are you prepared to show off as you go about your life? Do you wear a special fashion, a special fragrance? And all these things are very personal things, but it shows that we're totally committed. Brands become your friends, and friends are for life.
So it's about trust as well.
Absolutely.
We have to leave it there, but thank you. So interesting. Interbrand Sampson de Villiers, founder and chair, Jeremy Sampson.